When assembling strings, it's tempting to put them together using simple concatenation. I'm working in a project named String Builder, and I've declared two strings with values of hello and world. Let's say I wanted to create a third string that put those strings together and added some extra characters. I could do this. I'll create my third string and start with str1, and then I'll add a comma and a space, and then I'll append str2, and then I'll append an exclamation mark. And that all works fine. I'll output the value to the console and show that putting strings together like this will achieve the desired effect. But the problem is that in order to do that, I've created three distinct objects, the original two and then the third. If you're dealing with a lot of string concatenation, this can cause problems in memory management. So instead, it's recommended that you use a class named String Builder. This class is a member of the java.lang package, so you don't need any special imports for it. I'll declare a String Builder object, and I'll give it a name of SB. And I'll instantiate it using the new keyword, and then the constructor method for the class. The pull-down menu that appears here shows me that there are three versions of the constructor method. One that takes an integer, something called the capacity. That's a way of setting the capacity of the String Builder object ahead of time, if you know how much data you want to hold. Or you can initialize it with a string or something called a character sequence. I'm going to choose the string version, and I'm going to pass in the initial string that I passed in before. I'll finish that statement. Now, I'll call the String Builder object's append method. Notice that there are many versions of the append method, one for each of the primitive data types, one for character sequences, one for strings, and one for a class named StringBuffer, which isn't used too much these days. I'll call the append method for the string, and I'll pass in a comma and a space. I'll finish that line, and then I'll duplicate that line a couple of times, and then I'll pass in two more strings, the word world, and then an exclamation mark. Then I'll output the results. I'll pass the String Builder object directly into the print line method, and then I'll run the code, and I see that the string has been put together exactly the same way as before. But now I'm only creating one object instead of three. Here are some other things to know about the String Builder object. Each of the methods that you called, such as append, returns a reference to that String Builder object, so you can chain your calls together. So for example, in this code, I could get rid of these SB references, and then go back to all the lines except the last one and remove the semicolons. Now I'm going to add some tabulation to make it clear that this is all one statement. When I first instantiate the String Builder object, I get back a reference to the object. But then I can call its methods immediately, and each time I call the method, it's passing back the same reference. So I'm constructing the object and passing in the initial value, and then I'm calling the append method 3 times. And the result, again, is exactly the same, but just with a little bit less code. You can also use a String Builder to collect data that the user provides. I'm going to use a class called the Scanner class. This is a member of a package called java.util, so when I select it, an import statement will be added at the top of the code. I'll name my scanner object Scanner with a lowercase s. So Scanner with an uppercase s is the class, and with lowercase it's the object. And then I'll instantiate it with the new keyword and a call to the constructor method. The Scanner's constructor method has a bunch of different versions. One of them looks for something called an input stream, and it turns out that system.in is exactly that. If I type in system.in, I see the data type in the list way over at the right, and so I'm saying collect the data from the console, just like system.out outputs to the console. Now I'll display a prompt for the user. Notice I'm using the print method, not println. I'll type enter a value, and then I'll declare a string variable named input, and I'll get its value by calling a method named scanner.nextLine. The nextLine method waits for the user to type in some text and then press enter or return, and whatever the user typed in will be returned from the method, and I'm saving that in the variable. Then I'll output to the console, and I'll repeat the text that the user typed in. I'll run the code, and I see Hello World twice from the first part of the application. Then I see my prompt enter value. I'll click into my command prompt right next to the colon, and I'll type a value. I'll press enter or return, and I see the value printed back. Now I'll combine the two together, the string builder and the scanner. First, I'll delete the contents of the string builder with this code, sb.delete. The delete method takes two arguments, both integers, the starting character and the ending. The starting can be 0. As with arrays in Java, you're always counting starting at 0. The ending will be the number of characters minus 1, but I can simply pass in the number of characters in the string builder, and that'll be good enough. To get that value, I'll use the expression sb.length. Length is a method of the string builder class. So now I'm using the string builder again, and I'll be appending from scratch. Next, I'll add code for an iteration loop using the for keyword. I'll type the word for, and I see a menu pop up, and I'll choose for I, create iteration loop. And when I press enter or return, I see classic looping syntax for C-style languages. This is an iteration loop that looks for a certain number of loops. It starts with a value of 0 assigned to a variable named I, then continues looping until I equals a certain number, and I'll set that number as 3. The third part of this expression, I++, means increment the value of I by 1 each time through the loop. Now, within the for loop, I'll reuse that input variable that I already declared, and just as I did before, I'll get a value from scanner.nextLine. Then I'll append to the string builder using sb.append, and I'll pass in the input value, but I'll append to that a line feed, which in Java is expressed with an escape sequence of \n wrapped in double quotes. So that code is going to execute 3 times. When the loop is done, I'll output the result, once again using printLine, and I'll pass in the string builder object. If you want this code to be more explicit, you could use the expression sb.toString. But when you pass in the builder object, the toString method is being called automatically for you, so you don't need that extra code. So I'll run one more time, and when I'm prompted, I'll click into the window, and I'll enter a value, and I see that repeated back to me. That was the first call to scanner.nextLine. Now I'm in the for loop, and I'll type in 1, press enter or return, then 2, then enter or return again, and 3. And now when I press enter or return, I see all 3 values printed back. They're stacked on top of each other because I added the explicit line feed at the end. So that's a look at how you can use the string builder class to put strings together at runtime while minimizing the number of objects you're creating in memory, and how you can use the scanner class to get data from the user at runtime.